When arrogant CEO Marcus Blackwell mocked 7-year-old Jamie, challenging him to ride an untamed stallion in exchange for marrying his mother, no one expected what happened next. The boy's extraordinary gift with animals would shock everyone present, but no one imagined what would come next. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Marcus Blackwell stood on the wraparound porch of his sprawling Kentucky estate, his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit catching the golden afternoon light. At 32, he commanded respect through fear rather than admiration, his steel-grey eyes scanning his property with the cold calculation of a man who measured everything by its monetary value. The sound of hooves echoed from the nearby paddock, where Thunder, his prized black stallion, paced restlessly behind reinforced fencing. "Mr. Blackwell, sir?" Sarah Martinez approached hesitantly, her worn cleaning uniform a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding them. Her gentle voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had worked since dawn. "I've finished the East Wing. Should I start on the library next?" Marcus barely glanced at her, his attention fixed on his phone screen displaying stock prices. "Whatever. Just make sure you don't touch the antique books. They're worth more than your annual salary." Behind Sarah, a small figure emerged from behind a marble column. Jamie Martinez, 7 years old, with warm brown eyes and unruly dark hair, clutched a small wooden horse his late grandfather had carved for him. The boy's clothes were clean, but clearly hand-me-downs, patches carefully sewn where knees had worn through. "Mama, can I play in the garden?" Jamie's voice was soft, respectful, but Marcus's head snapped up at the interruption. "Who said you could bring your kid here?" Marcus's tone was sharp enough to cut glass. "This isn't a daycare center." Sarah's cheeks flushed red. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell. The babysitter cancelled last minute and I couldn't afford to miss work." "He won't be any trouble, I promise." Jamie stepped forward, his small chin lifted with surprising courage. "I'm not trouble, sir. I can help Mama clean if you want." Marcus let out a harsh laugh, the sound echoing across the manicured grounds. "Help? What could a kid like you possibly help with? You probably can't even tie your own shoes properly." "I can tie my shoes," Jamie said quietly, but his voice carried an unexpected steadiness. "And I'm good with animals. I saw your horse earlier. He looked sad." The CEO's expression darkened. "Sad? That horse is worth more than your mother makes in 5 years. He's not sad, he's powerful, dangerous. No one can ride him except professional trainers, and even they struggle." Thunder's angry snort punctuated Marcus's words as if the stallion was responding to the conversation. The magnificent animal had been a symbol of Marcus's power since he'd acquired him 6 months ago, but no rider had successfully mounted him for more than a few seconds. "Maybe he just needs someone to understand him," Jamie whispered, moving closer to the fence despite his mother's worried expression. Marcus followed the boy's gaze to where Thunder paced, his muscled frame rippling with barely contained energy. An idea formed in Marcus's mind, cruel and calculated, designed to humiliate this presumptuous child and remind everyone of their place in his world. "You think you understand animals, kid?" Marcus's voice took on a dangerous edge. "Here's a deal for you. If you can mount that horse and stay on for 30 seconds, I'll marry your mother. Give her the life she deserves." Sarah gasped, her face pale. "Mr. Blackwell, please. He's just a child. That horse could kill him." But Marcus wasn't finished. His smile was predatory as he continued, "But when you fail, and you will fail, your mother finds another job. Tonight." Jamie looked between his mother's terrified face and the powerful stallion. At 7 years old, he understood more about adult cruelty than any child should. He'd heard his mother crying late at night, whispering prayers about medical bills and overdue rent. He'd seen her hands shake from exhaustion as she counted coins for their meager dinner. "Jamie." "No," Sarah pleaded, reaching for her son's hand. "We'll figure something else out." We always do. But the boy was already walking toward the paddock gate, his wooden horse clutched tightly in his small fist. Marcus followed, his expensive leather shoes crunching on the gravel path, while Sarah hurried behind them, her heart pounding with maternal terror. Thunder turned at their approach, his dark eyes wild and untrusting. The stallion reared slightly, a warning that had sent grown men scrambling for safety, but Jamie didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer to the fence, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, boy, I know you're scared. I'm scared too sometimes." Marcus laughed again, but the sound was strained now. Something about the child's calm demeanor was unsettling. "This is ridiculous. Sarah, get your kid before he gets himself trampled." But Jamie was already unlatching the gate with careful, deliberate movements. Thunder's ears twitched, his aggressive posturing softening almost imperceptibly. The boy stepped into the paddock, and the massive stallion froze, as if sensing something different about this small human. "Easy, Thunder," Jamie murmured, using the horse's name naturally, as if they were old friends. "You don't have to be angry anymore." The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out an apple he'd saved from his school lunch, a small sacrifice he'd planned to eat later when hunger gnawed at his belly. He offered it to Thunder with an open palm, his movements slow and unthreatening. Thunder's nostrils flared as he caught the apple's scent. For a long moment, horse and boy regarded each other in perfect stillness. Then, with surprising gentleness, the stallion lowered his great head and delicately took the apple from Jamie's hand. Marcus's smirk faltered as he watched the scene unfold. This wasn't going according to his plan. The horse that had terrorized experienced riders was now nuzzling the small boy's shoulder with evident affection. Jamie placed his tiny hand on Thunder's neck, feeling the warmth of the animal's coat and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "You just wanted someone to be kind to you, didn't you?" he whispered. With movements that seemed guided by instinct rather than experience, Jamie grasped Thunder's mane and swung himself onto the stallion's back. Thunder stood perfectly still, as docile as a pony ride at a county fair. Sarah covered her mouth with both hands, torn between pride and terror as she watched her son sit confidently on the powerful horse. Marcus stood frozen, his worldview tilting on its axis as a 7-year-old boy accomplished what professional riders had failed to achieve. Jamie sat straight and calm on Thunder's back, his small frame somehow perfectly balanced despite the lack of saddle or bridle. The stallion began to walk in a slow, measured circle around the paddock, responding to subtle shifts in the boy's weight and whispered words of encouragement. 30 seconds passed, then a minute, then 2. Thunder moved with the grace of a dancer, every step careful and controlled, as if he understood the precious cargo he carried. Marcus's mouth went dry as he realized the implications of what he was witnessing. He'd made a public promise, spoken in the heat of arrogance, and now this impossible child was making him keep it. "That's enough!" Marcus called out, his voice cracking with desperation. "Get down from there." But Jamie wasn't finished. He leaned forward, whispering something in Thunder's ear that made the stallion's ears prick forward with interest. Then, with a gentle squeeze of his legs, Jamie guided Thunder into a gentle trot, then a canter. Horse and rider moved as one, their synchronization so perfect it seemed supernatural. Jamie's laughter rang out pure and joyful, the sound of a child experiencing true magic for the first time in his short, difficult life. Finally, responding to some unspoken communication, Thunder slowed to a walk and approached the fence where Sarah and Marcus waited. Jamie slid down from the stallion's back with easy grace, then turned to stroke the horse's neck one final time. "Good boy, Thunder. Thank you for trusting me." The stallion lowered his head, allowing Jamie to scratch behind his ears before the boy stepped out of the paddock and carefully latched the gate behind him. Marcus stared in stunned silence as Jamie walked back to his mother, who swept him into a fierce embrace. The CEO's carefully constructed world of cynicism and cruelty had just been shattered by a 7-year-old with a gift that defied explanation. "So," Jamie said, looking up at Marcus with those impossibly wise brown eyes, "when are you going to marry my mama?" The evening air hung heavy with unspoken tension as Marcus paced his mahogany-panelled study, a crystal tumbler of 30-year-old scotch untouched on his desk. Through the tall windows, he could see the lights of the servants' quarters, where Sarah was undoubtedly tucking Jamie into bed, their small apartment above the garage, a world away from his palatial mansion. The image of the boy on Thunder's back played on endless repeat in Marcus's mind. In his 32 years, he'd built an empire through cold calculation and ruthless determination, but he'd never encountered anything that challenged his understanding of reality like Jamie's impossible connection with the stallion. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. "Come in," he called, expecting his personal assistant with the evening reports. Instead, Sarah entered hesitantly, still wearing her cleaning uniform. Her long black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and exhaustion lined her gentle features like a roadmap of struggle. "Mr. Blackwell, I need to talk to you about what happened today." Marcus turned from the window, his expression carefully neutral. "If you're here to tell me it was some kind of trick—" "It wasn't a trick." Sarah's voice was firm despite her obvious nervousness. "Jamie has always been special with animals. Even as a toddler, stray dogs would follow him home. Birds would land on his shoulders. I thought it was just, I don't know, coincidence maybe." She moved closer, her work-worn hands clasped tightly in front of her. "But what you saw today, that was real. Jamie did something incredible, and now you're bound by your word." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You can't seriously expect me to marry you because of some playground dare." "I was trying to teach the boy a lesson about knowing his place." "His place?" Sarah's gentle demeanor flashed with sudden fire. "Jamie is 7 years old. His place should be in a classroom learning about dinosaurs and multiplication tables, not witnessing adults mock children for sport." "Hey!" The unexpected steel in her voice caught Marcus off guard. In the 6 months she'd worked for him, Sarah had been nothing but deferential, almost invisible. This woman defending her son was someone entirely different. "Besides," Sarah continued, her voice softening again, "I'm not here to force you into anything. I know the kind of man you are, Mr. Blackwell. You wouldn't marry someone like me even if the boy had performed actual miracles." Marcus set down his glass with more force than necessary. "Someone like you. What's that supposed to mean?" Sarah's laugh was hollow, devoid of humor. "I'm a maid, Mr. Blackwell. I clean your toilets and dust your priceless art collection. I have a 7-year-old son and no college degree. I work 16-hour days and still struggle to pay rent on a 1-bedroom apartment above your garage." She paused, her dark eyes meeting his directly for the first time since she'd entered the room. "But I'm also a woman who's fought for everything she has. I've never asked for charity, and I'm not starting now. I just want to know, are you a man who keeps his word?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus had built his reputation on ironclad contracts and ruthless enforcement of agreements. His word in business was his bond, feared and respected across 3 continents. But this was different. This was personal, messy, human. "Tell me about Jamie's father," Marcus said suddenly, the question surprising them both. Sarah's composure wavered for just a moment. "There's not much to tell. David was. He was young. We both were. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready to be a father. I haven't seen him since Jamie was 2. She moved to the window, looking out at the small apartment where her son slept. "Jamie used to ask about him constantly. 'Where's my daddy? Why doesn't he come to see me? Did I do something wrong?' It broke my heart every time. Marcus found himself studying her profile in the moonlight. Without the harsh fluorescent lighting of the cleaning supplies closet, he could see that Sarah Martinez was actually quite beautiful. Her features were delicate but strong, her posture carrying a quiet dignity despite her circumstances. "He stopped asking about David last year," Sarah continued. "I think he decided it hurt too much to keep hoping." "But he still wants a father figure," Marcus observed, remembering the boy's earnest question about marriage. Sarah nodded. "Jamie's a good kid, Mr. Blackwell. Better than good. He's special in ways that go far beyond what you saw today. He helps elderly neighbors carry groceries. He shares his lunch with kids who forget theirs. When Mrs. Henderson's cat went missing, Jamie spent 3 days searching every alley in the neighborhood until he found her." She turned back to face Marcus, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "He deserves better than what I can give him. He deserves a father who'll teach him to throw a baseball and help him with his homework and show him how to be a good man." The raw emotion in her voice stirred something uncomfortable in Marcus's chest. He'd spent years insulating himself from other people's problems, viewing them as weaknesses to be exploited rather than struggles to be understood. "Why do you work 16-hour days?" he asked quietly. Sarah's breath caught, and for a moment she looked like she might refuse to answer. Then her shoulders sagged with the weight of carrying secrets alone. "My mother is sick, cancer. The treatments they're expensive, and her insurance doesn't cover everything. I work here during the day, then clean offices downtown at night. On weekends, I do laundry for some of the wealthy families in Lexington." The pieces of her life fell into place like a puzzle Marcus hadn't realized he was solving, the exhaustion that seemed to radiate from her bones, the careful way she stretched every dollar, the fierce protectiveness toward her son that went beyond normal maternal instinct. "How long have you been doing this?" Marcus asked. 2 years. Since the diagnosis." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "Jamie doesn't know how sick she is. He thinks Grandma Eleanor just needs medicine to feel better. I want to keep it that way as long as possible." Marcus moved to his desk and opened his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard. After a few minutes of searching, he found what he was looking for, the billing records from Methodist Hospital's oncology department. "Eleanor Martinez, 73 years old, stage 3 ovarian cancer," he read from the screen. "Current balance owed, $47,000. Sarah's face went white. "How did you—" "I own a significant stake in Methodist Hospital," Marcus said matter-of-factly. "The board sends me quarterly reports on outstanding debts. I just never connected the name to you." He studied the financial records with the same intensity he brought to corporate acquisitions. "Your mother's treatment plan is aggressive but promising. Dr. Patterson is one of the best oncologists in the state. The survival rate for her specific diagnosis and treatment protocol is 68%. "I know the statistics," Sarah said quietly. "I've researched everything. That's why I'll do whatever it takes to pay for it." Marcus closed the laptop and leaned back in his leather chair. The woman standing before him wasn't just a maid. She was a warrior, fighting a battle she couldn't afford to lose. Her son wasn't just a child with an unusual gift. He was a boy growing up too fast in the shadow of adult struggles he shouldn't have to understand. "The marriage proposal stands," Marcus said suddenly. Sarah's head snapped up in shock. "What?" "I made a promise in front of witnesses. Jamie fulfilled his end of the bargain. A Blackwell always honors his debts." Marcus's voice was steady, businesslike, as if he were negotiating a merger rather than discussing matrimony. "But you don't love me," Sarah protested. "You don't even like me. You think I'm beneath you." Marcus stood and walked around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her. "Love is a luxury, Sarah. What you and Jamie need is security. What I need is—" He paused, searching for words to explain something he didn't fully understand himself. "What do you need?" she asked softly. Marcus looked out the window toward the paddock, where thunder grazed peacefully in the moonlight. "I need to remember what it feels like to be human again." The confession surprised them both. Marcus had spent so many years building walls around his heart that he'd almost forgotten what existed behind them. But watching Jamie with thunder had cracked something open inside him, something he'd thought was dead and buried. "This would be a business arrangement," Marcus continued, his tone becoming more formal as he retreated from emotional vulnerability. "You and Jamie would move into the main house. Your mother's medical bills would be paid in full. Jamie would attend the best private school in Lexington. In exchange, you'd fulfill the social obligations of being Mrs. Marcus Blackwell." Sarah stared at him in amazement. "You're serious? You're actually serious?" "I'm always serious about business. But what about Jamie? He's just a little boy. He doesn't understand the complexities of adult relationships. He thinks you marrying me means he gets the father he's always wanted." Marcus's expression hardened slightly. "Then he'll learn that life rarely gives us what we want. He'll have financial security and educational opportunities. That's more than most children get." "It's not more than he deserves," Sarah said fiercely. "Jamie deserves a father who loves him, not a business arrangement that treats him like a side benefit." "Love is a fairy tale, Sarah. Security is real. Protection is real. The chance to save your mother's life is real." Marcus returned to his desk and pulled out a legal pad. "I'll have my attorney draw up a contract. We can be married within the week." Sarah watched him begin writing, his elegant handwriting filling the page with the cold language of legal agreements. She thought about her mother's pain-filled nights and Jamie's innocent dreams of having a family. She thought about the bills piling up on her tiny kitchen table and the fear that kept her awake most nights. "One condition," she said suddenly. Marcus looked up, his pen poised over the paper. "What?" "You don't hurt Jamie, ever. Not with words, not with neglect, not with cruelty disguised as life lessons. He's been through enough disappointment for one lifetime." "I'm not a monster, Sarah." "Prove it," she challenged. "Show me that the man who would mock a 7-year-old child for sport is capable of basic human decency." Marcus set down his pen and studied her face. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Gratitude, submission. A woman so desperate for security that she'd accept any terms without question." Sarah's smile was sad but knowing. "I am desperate, Mr. Blackwell. More desperate than you can possibly imagine. But desperation doesn't make me weak. It makes me dangerous. Because I'll fight for my son and my mother with everything I have, even if that fight is against my own husband." The word husband hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them was prepared to fully examine. Marcus found himself wondering what he'd gotten himself into, while Sarah silently prayed she was making the right choice for the people she loved most. Outside, thunder whinnied softly in the darkness, as if the stallion understood that everything was about to change. The morning of the wedding dawned crisp and clear, with autumn sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows of St. Catherine's Chapel. The small church, built in 1847, sat on a hill overlooking the Blackwell estate, its weathered stone walls having witnessed countless unions between Kentucky's elite families over the decades. Marcus stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored charcoal-grey Armani suit, his expression unreadable as he watched the sparse congregation take their seats. His business associates filled the first few pews, men and women who understood that this marriage was as much about social positioning as personal choice. None of them questioned why Marcus Blackwell, one of Kentucky's most eligible bachelors, was marrying his housekeeper. Dr. Patricia Wells, Marcus's longtime friend and the only person who dared challenge his decisions, leaned over from the front pew. "You know it's not too late to reconsider this insanity," she whispered. "It's a sound business decision. Marcus replied quietly, adjusting his platinum cufflinks, a nervous habit he'd developed in high school debate tournaments. Business? Patricia raised an eyebrow. Marcus, you're marrying a woman you've known for 6 months and adopting a child who apparently has supernatural powers with horses. That's not business. That's either a miracle or a midlife crisis. Before Marcus could respond, the chapel doors opened and Sarah entered with Jamie at her side. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as he saw her for the first time as his bride-to-be. Sarah wore a simple but elegant cream-colored dress that Patricia had helped her select from a boutique in downtown Lexington. The silk fabric fell gracefully to just below her knees, and a vintage pearl necklace, borrowed from Eleanor's jewelry box, added a touch of classic sophistication. Her dark hair was styled in a loose chignon, with a few soft tendrils framing her face, but it was her expression that truly transformed her. Gone was the tired, worried maid who'd scrubbed his floors. In her place stood a woman with quiet dignity and understated beauty, walking down the aisle with her head held high despite the curious stares from the congregation. Jamie, dressed in a navy blue suit that Patricia had insisted on purchasing, walked proudly beside his mother. The 7-year-old's face glowed with excitement, his small hand clasped tightly in Sarah's as they approached the altar. To him, this wasn't a business arrangement. It was the answer to every prayer he'd whispered into his pillow at night. "She's beautiful," Patricia murmured, and Marcus found himself nodding in agreement before he caught himself. Father Mackenzie, the elderly priest who'd baptized Marcus 32 years earlier, smiled warmly as the small wedding party gathered at the altar. The ceremony would be brief and simple, exactly as Marcus had requested. No fuss, no sentiment, just the legal formalities required to make Sarah Martinez into Sarah Blackwell. "Dearly beloved," Father Mackenzie began, his voice carrying the authority of 5 decades spent guiding couples through life's most significant moments. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Marcus Jonathan Blackwell and Sarah Elena Martinez in holy matrimony." Marcus barely heard the opening words. His attention focused on Sarah's profile as she stood beside him. This close, he could see the faint freckles across her nose and the way her eyelashes cast shadows on her cheekbones. She smelled like vanilla and jasmine, a stark contrast to the industrial cleaning supplies he'd always associated with her. "Marriage is not to be undertaken lightly," Father Mackenzie continued, "but with reverence, discretion, advisedly and soberly, as it is ordained by God for the procreation of children, for remedy against sin, and for the mutual society, help and comfort that the one ought to have of the other, both in prosperity and adversity." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she held her small bouquet of white roses, another gift from Patricia, who seemed determined to inject some romance into what Marcus insisted was purely a practical arrangement. She glanced down at Jamie, whose face was bright with happiness, and felt her resolve strengthen. Whatever this marriage was or wasn't, it would give her son opportunities she could never provide alone. "Marcus," Father Mackenzie said, "do you take Sarah to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Marcus looked into Sarah's dark eyes, seeing the fear and hope warring in their depths. "I do," he said firmly, his voice carrying across the small chapel. "Sarah, do you take Marcus to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Sarah's voice was soft but steady. "I do." "The rings, please." Jamie stepped forward importantly, carrying the small silk pillow that held 2 simple platinum bands. Marcus had chosen them from Tiffany's catalogue with the same efficiency he applied to selecting office supplies, functional, quality craftsmanship, nothing flashy or sentimental. Marcus slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger with careful precision, noting how small and delicate her hands were compared to his. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she placed the matching band on Marcus's finger, the unfamiliar weight of jewelry foreign to her work-roughened fingers. "By the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the Holy Catholic Church," Father Mackenzie announced, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Marcus, you may kiss your bride." The moment stretched awkwardly between them. This was their first kiss, Marcus realized with something approaching panic. In all their practical discussions about contracts and living arrangements, the physical aspects of marriage hadn't been addressed. Sarah looked up at him with wide eyes, equally unsure how to navigate this moment. Finally, Marcus leaned down and brushed his lips against hers, in the briefest possible contact that could still be called a kiss. It was formal, restrained, devoid of passion, exactly what both of them had expected. But even that chaste contact sent an unexpected jolt through Marcus's system, a recognition of Sarah as a woman rather than just an employee or a business arrangement. She tasted like mint and possibility, and for just a moment, Marcus forgot that this was supposed to be purely practical. "Ladies and gentlemen," Father Mackenzie announced with a broad smile, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Blackwell." The small congregation applauded politely as Marcus and Sarah turned to face them as a married couple. Jamie bounced excitedly, his joy infectious despite the formal atmosphere. But as they walked back down the aisle together, Marcus caught sight of a figure in the last pew that made his blood run cold. David Martinez sat in the shadows, his presence as unexpected as it was unwelcome. Sarah's ex-boyfriend and Jamie's biological father had somehow learned about the wedding, and his appearance here could only mean trouble. Sarah followed Marcus's gaze and gasped when she saw David. The man who'd abandoned her when she needed him most looked older, rougher around the edges, but his dark eyes held the same selfish calculation she remembered too well. Jamie, oblivious to the tension, tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Mr. Marcus, Dad, can we have cake now? Mum said there would be cake." The innocent question snapped Marcus's attention back to his new family. Whatever David Martinez wanted, it would have to wait. Today was about Jamie's happiness and Sarah's security, not about ghosts from the past. "Of course we can have cake, son," Marcus said, the word son feeling strange but not unpleasant on his tongue. "It's chocolate with raspberry filling, your favorite, right?" Jamie's face lit up like Christmas morning. "You remembered. Mum told you chocolate is my favorite." As they moved toward the chapel's reception hall, Marcus felt Sarah's hand slip into his, not for affection, but for support. She was frightened by David's sudden appearance, and instinctively turning to her new husband for protection. For the first time since this whole arrangement began, Marcus felt something beyond obligation toward his new wife and stepson. He felt protective, possessive even. They were his responsibility now, his family, and no one, not even Jamie's biological father, was going to threaten that. The reception was small and elegant, with Patricia having arranged for catering from Lexington's finest restaurant. The three-tier chocolate cake sat as the centerpiece of the dessert table, surrounded by flowers and candles that cast dancing shadows across the reception hall's oak-paneled walls. Jamie had attached himself to Marcus's side, chattering excitedly about everything from the cake to the flowers to his new bedroom in the big house. The boy's natural charm and obvious happiness gradually melted the reserved atmosphere, and even Marcus's business associates found themselves smiling at his enthusiasm. "This is the best day ever," Jamie announced, chocolate frosting smeared across his chin. "I have a dad now, and Mom doesn't have to work so hard, and Grandma Eleanor is going to get better medicine." Patricia pulled Marcus aside during the reception, her expression serious. He's going to break your heart, you know. What do you mean? Jamie. That little boy adores you already, and you're going to disappoint him when he realizes this marriage isn't what he thinks it is. Marcus watched Jamie explaining horse behavior to a bemused corporate lawyer, his small hands gesturing animatedly as he described Thunder's personality. Children are resilient, he'll adapt. Will you? Patricia challenged. Because I've watched you for the past hour, and you're already changing. The way you look at Sarah, the way you respond to Jamie, this isn't as cold and calculated as you want everyone to believe. Before Marcus could respond, David Martinez approached their table. Up close, he looked harder than Marcus remembered from the brief glimpse in the chapel. His clothes were expensive but flashy, and there was something predatory in his smile. "Congratulations, Mr. Blackwell," David said, extending his hand. "I'm David Martinez, Jamie's real father." The emphasis on real was deliberate and cutting. Marcus shook the offered hand briefly, his grip firm and warning. "David, Sarah mentioned you briefly." "I bet she did." David's laugh was ugly. "Look, I don't want to cause any trouble on your special day, but we need to talk about my son." "Your son is busy enjoying his new life," Marcus replied coolly. "Perhaps you should have thought about being part of it before today." David's expression hardened. "I've been thinking about it a lot lately, especially when I learned that my boy's new stepfather is worth about $50 million. The mercenary calculation in David's eyes made Marcus's jaw clench. "What do you want?" "Joint custody. Back child support, you know, all the things a loving father is entitled to." Sarah appeared at Marcus's elbow, having overheard the last part of the conversation. "David, you can't be serious. You haven't seen Jamie in 5 years. You don't even know his favorite color or what grade he's in." "Red and second grade," David said smugly. "I've been doing my homework, Sarah. Amazing how much you can learn about someone when there's money involved." Jamie chose that moment to run over, his face still glowing with happiness. "Mom, did you see how Mr. Patterson's daughter liked my horse stories? She said she wants to meet Thunder tomorrow." He stopped short when he saw David, his young face scrunching in confusion. "Who's this, Mom?" The moment stretched painfully as Sarah struggled to find words. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that his absent father has suddenly reappeared on the happiest day of his life? "Jamie," Sarah said carefully, this is David." Recognition dawned slowly in Jamie's eyes, followed by a complex mix of emotions too mature for his young face. Hope, fear, anger, and desperate longing warred in his expression as he stared at the man who'd abandoned him. "Are you my real dad?" Jamie asked in a small voice. David's smile was calculated for maximum impact. "I sure am, buddy. And I'm here because I missed you so much. I want to be part of your life again." Marcus felt something violent surge in his chest as he watched Jamie's confused reaction to his biological father's sudden attention. The boy who'd been radiating pure joy moments before now looked lost and uncertain, caught between the security of his new family and the impossible dream of his old one. This was far from over. David Martinez had just declared war on the Blackwell family, and Marcus knew that the real fight for Jamie's heart and future was only beginning. The morning after the wedding, Marcus found Jamie sitting alone in the mansion's vast kitchen, his small legs swinging from the bar stool as he picked at a bowl of cereal. The boy's usual bright chatter was notably absent, replaced by a contemplative silence that seemed far too heavy for 7-year-old shoulders. "Good morning, Jamie," Marcus said, pouring himself coffee from the industrial-grade machine that had cost more than most people's cars. "Did you sleep well in your new room?" Jamie looked up with those impossibly expressive brown eyes, and Marcus was struck again by the child's uncanny ability to convey adult emotions. "It's a really big room. I got lost trying to find the bathroom last night. We'll put up some signs until you get used to the layout," Marcus offered, settling into the chair across from his new stepson. The formal dining room felt absurdly large for their small family breakfast, but Marcus wasn't sure where else they should eat. "Mr. Marcus." Jamie's voice was hesitant, uncertain. "That man yesterday, David, he said he was my real dad. Does that mean you're not my dad anymore?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd spent most of the night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, and wondering how to navigate the complex emotional minefield that David Martinez had introduced to their carefully structured arrangement. "Jamie, being someone's father isn't just about biology," Marcus said carefully. "It's about being there when that person needs you. It's about teaching and protecting and caring. David may have helped create you, but I'm the one who's here now." The boy nodded slowly, processing this information with the serious consideration of a child who'd been forced to grow up too quickly. "Mom cried last night. She thought I was asleep, but I heard her." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. "Your mother has been through a lot of difficult things, Jamie. Sometimes adults need to cry to feel better. Like when Thunder was angry and scared. He was mean to everyone until I showed him it was okay to trust people again." Hey! The comparison was so unexpectedly insightful that Marcus found himself studying Jamie with new interest. This child saw connections and patterns that escaped most adults, viewing the world through a lens of empathy and understanding that was both remarkable and rare. "That's exactly right," Marcus said. "Sometimes people and horses act angry or mean when they're really just scared or hurt." Jamie brightened at the validation, his natural optimism beginning to resurface. "Can we go see Thunder today? I want to show you how we talk to each other." Before Marcus could respond, Sarah appeared in the doorway, wearing one of the new outfits Patricia had helped her select. A simple but elegant blue dress that transformed her from housekeeper to lady of the manor. Her eyes were slightly red-rimmed from crying, but she'd applied makeup skillfully enough to hide most of the evidence. "Good morning," she said softly, her gaze flickering uncertainly between Marcus and Jamie. The dynamic between them all had shifted overnight, and none of them quite knew how to navigate their new roles. "Mom!" Jamie jumped down from his stool and ran to hug her around the waist. "Mr. Marcus said we're still a family, even though David came back. And he's going to watch me and Thunder talk today." Sarah's eyes met Marcus's over Jamie's head, gratitude and apprehension warring in her expression. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. But first we need to discuss something important." She guided Jamie back to his stool and took a deep breath. "David called this morning. He wants to take you out for lunch today, just the two of you." Marcus's coffee cup hit the granite countertop with more force than intended. "Absolutely not." "Marcus," Sarah's voice carried a warning. "He has legal rights." "Lied. He has legal obligations he ignored for 5 years. Marcus shot back, then caught himself as he saw Jamie watching their exchange with growing distress. "I mean, perhaps we should discuss this privately." But Jamie was already climbing down from his stool, his face pale with the kind of fear that came from watching the adults in his life argue about his future. "I don't want to go with David. I don't know him. I want to stay here with you and Mom." Sarah knelt down to Jamie's eye level, her voice gentle but firm. "Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do, especially when they involve family. David is your biological father, and he says he wants to get to know you better." "But I already have a dad now," Jamie protested, looking desperately at Marcus. "Right? You married Mom, so you're my dad. That's how it works." And the naked hope in the boy's voice was almost unbearable. Marcus found himself caught between his business-oriented practicality and an unexpected surge of protective instinct that surprised him with its intensity. "Jamie," Marcus said carefully, "I will always be here for you, no matter what happens with David. That's a promise." The sound of a car door slamming in the circular driveway interrupted their conversation. Through the kitchen's bay window, they could see David Martinez climbing out of a flashy red sports car that looked expensive but somehow cheap at the same time. "He's early," Sarah muttered, glancing at the clock. "He said 1 o'clock. David knocked on the front door with the aggressive confidence of someone who'd never learned to wait for permission. Marcus stood, his protective instincts fully engaged now, and moved toward the foyer, with Sarah and Jamie following close behind. When Marcus opened the door, David was already checking his reflection in the hall mirror, adjusting his designer sunglasses and smoothing his hair. He wore a leather jacket over dark jeans and boots that were trying too hard to project an image of dangerous charm. "Morning, family," David said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Ready to spend some quality time with your old man, Jamie?" Jamie pressed closer to Marcus, his small hand gripping the fabric of Marcus's casual Saturday shirt. "I thought we were supposed to go later. I figured why wait? Time's wasting, and we've got 7 years to catch up on." David's gaze swept the opulent foyer, taking in the crystal chandelier and original oil paintings with barely concealed avarice. "Nice place you've got here, Marcus. Must be nice to buy yourself a ready-made family." "David," Sarah's voice carried a sharp warning. "Not in front of Jamie." But David was already moving past them into the house without invitation, his eyes cataloguing the expensive furnishings like an appraiser calculating values. "Relax, Sarah. I'm just admiring your upgrade, from cleaning lady to millionaire's wife. That's quite a leap." Marcus stepped forward, his voice deadly quiet. "I think you should leave." "Actually, I think I should stay." David pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket and handed it to Marcus. "That's a petition for joint custody. Filed yesterday afternoon with the family court. Looks like we're going to be co-parenting, Marcus." Sarah gasped, her face going white as she read over Marcus's shoulder. The legal document was professionally prepared and disturbingly thorough, requesting not only joint physical custody, but also child support retroactive to Jamie's birth. "You can't be serious," Sarah whispered. "You haven't been part of his life for 5 years. You don't even know his middle name." "Michael," David said smugly. "Jamie Michael Martinez, born October 15th at Methodist Hospital, 7 pounds 3 ounces, blue eyes that turned brown when he was 6 months old. First word was mama, but his second was dada. That's me, in case you forgot." Jamie stared at David in amazement. "You know all that about me?" "I know everything about you, son. I may not have been around, but I never stopped caring. I just needed to get my life together first, so I could be the father you deserve." The words were perfectly calculated to appeal to a 7-year-old's desperate need for paternal love and approval. Jamie's expression brightened with cautious hope, and Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach as he watched the boy respond to David's manipulation. "Why don't we go for that lunch now?" David suggested, extending his hand to Jamie. "I know a great burger place downtown. We can talk about all the fun things we're going to do together." Jamie looked uncertainly between David's outstretched hand and Marcus's tense face. The conflict was clearly visible in his young features, the longing for his biological father's attention warring with his newfound security and affection for Marcus. "Can Mr. Marcus come too?" Jamie asked hopefully. David's smile turned predatory. "Not today, buddy. This is just for you and me, father and son time. Besides, I'm sure Marcus has important business things to do. Rich guys are always busy making more money, right?" The subtle dig wasn't lost on anyone in the room. David was positioning himself as the fun, available father in contrast to Marcus the cold businessman. It was a strategy that might prove devastatingly effective with a child who'd spent his entire life craving a father's attention. Marcus knelt down to Jamie's level, his voice gentle but serious. "Jamie, you don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go, ever. That's not how families work. But he's my real dad, Jamie said softly, confusion evident in his voice. Doesn't that mean I have to? No one has to do anything just because of biology, Marcus replied firmly. Family is about choice and love and commitment. It's about showing up when it matters. David snorted. Easy to say when you've been here for all of 5 minutes. I'm his flesh and blood, Marcus. That means something, whether you want to admit it or not. Where were you when he had pneumonia last winter? Sarah's voice was shaking with suppressed fury. Where were you for his first day of school, his first loose tooth, the nightmares about monsters under his bed? Where were you when he asked me why his daddy didn't love him enough to stay? David's confident facade flickered for just a moment, revealing something uglier underneath. I was young and stupid, okay? I made mistakes, but I'm here now, and I have legal rights. You can make this easy, or you can make it hard, but either way, I'm going to be part of my son's life. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to catch. Marcus realized with crystal clarity that this was about much more than a father's love for his child. David Martinez smelled money and opportunity, and he was positioning himself to claim as much of both as possible. 1 hour, Marcus said finally, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. You can take Jamie for 1 hour in a public place, and Sarah goes with you. That's not how custody visits work, David protested. It's how they work until a judge says otherwise, Marcus replied coolly. Take it or leave it. David's jaw clenched, but he nodded grudgingly. Fine, 1 hour. But this is just the beginning. As they prepared to leave, Jamie turned back to Marcus, with eyes full of uncertainty and fear. You'll be here when I get back, right? You won't go away. Marcus felt his chest tighten at the naked vulnerability in the boy's voice. I'll be right here, Jamie, I promise. But as he watched David's red sports car disappear down the winding driveway with Sarah and Jamie inside, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just made a terrible mistake. David Martinez was playing a game with rules Marcus didn't fully understand, and the stakes were higher than money or property. They were playing for the heart and soul of a 7-year-old boy who'd already suffered too much disappointment in his short life. The hour stretched into 2, then 3, with no word from Sarah or Jamie. Marcus paced the length of his study like a caged predator, checking his phone every few minutes and growing more agitated with each passing moment. Patricia had arrived an hour earlier for their standing Saturday afternoon meeting, but she'd abandoned all pretense of discussing business as Marcus's anxiety became increasingly apparent. They should have been back by now, Marcus said for the 10th time, pausing by the window that overlooked the driveway. David said 1 hour. Maybe they're having a good time, Patricia suggested gently, though her own expression was troubled. Sometimes these things take longer than expected. Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming text from Sarah. David wants to show Jamie his apartment. Will be later than planned. Don't worry. Don't worry. Marcus read the message aloud, his voice tight with frustration. He's had my son for 3 hours, and she's telling me not to worry? Your son. Patricia raised an eyebrow at the possessive language, but Marcus was too agitated to notice his slip. I should never have let them go. David Martinez is playing games, and I handed him the perfect opportunity to manipulate Jamie. The sound of tires on gravel finally broke the tension. Marcus rushed to the window and saw David's sports car pulling into the circular drive, but something was wrong. Through the windshield, he could see Jamie in the passenger seat, his small face pressed against the glass, and his expression was far from happy. Marcus reached the front door before the car had fully stopped, with Patricia close behind him. When the doors opened, Jamie practically launched himself from the vehicle and ran straight into Marcus's arms, his small body shaking with what felt like relief. Hey, what's wrong? Marcus asked, lifting Jamie up and holding him close. Yes. The boy wrapped his arms around Marcus's neck and buried his face against his shoulder. Sarah emerged from the passenger side looking pale and shaken, her lips pressed into a thin line of barely controlled anger. David climbed out more slowly, his earlier confidence replaced by something that looked almost like disappointment. "What happened?" Marcus demanded, his protective instincts in full force as he felt Jamie trembling against him. "We had a great time," David said quickly, but his tone lacked conviction. "Didn't we, buddy?" Jamie's response was to tighten his grip on Marcus and refuse to look at his biological father. Sarah moved to Marcus's side, her hand finding Jamie's back in a gesture of maternal comfort. "Maybe we should go inside," Patricia suggested diplomatically, sensing the tension crackling between the adults. In the privacy of the living room, with Jamie finally calm enough to sit on the sofa between Marcus and Sarah, the story slowly emerged. David had taken them to his apartment, a flashy but cheaply furnished place that he'd clearly been trying to impress them with. But instead of the bonding experience he'd promised, David had spent most of the time on his phone, taking business calls and leaving Jamie to entertain himself. "He kept talking about money," Jamie said quietly, his voice small and confused. "He asked how much Mr. Marcus paid for our house, and if we had expensive cars, and if there were valuables he could. I don't remember the word." "Inventory," Sarah said grimly. "He wanted to inventory our assets." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was even uglier than he'd suspected. David wasn't interested in building a relationship with his son. He was conducting reconnaissance for what would undoubtedly be a much larger financial assault. "There's more," Sarah continued. "David received a phone call while we were there. He thought Jamie was in the bathroom, but he was actually in the hallway listening. The person on the phone was asking about Marcus's net worth and whether the marriage was legitimate." "He's building a case," Marcus realized. "This whole custody petition isn't about Jamie at all. It's about positioning himself to challenge the validity of our marriage and claim a portion of the assets through child support and alimony." Patricia whistled low. "That's actually pretty clever. Disturbing and mercenary, but clever." Jamie looked up at Marcus with confusion evident in his young face. "I don't understand. Why would David want to take our house? I thought he wanted to be my dad." The innocent question cut straight to the heart of the matter. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that his biological father sees him not as a son to love, but as a tool to be used for financial gain? "Some people make very poor choices, Jamie," Marcus said carefully. "Sometimes adults get confused about what's really important. But I thought..." Jamie's voice trailed off, and Marcus could see the exact moment when the boy's dreams of having his biological father back began to crumble. It was heartbreaking to witness this loss of innocence in such a young face. "I know what you thought, sweetheart," Sarah said softly, pulling Jamie closer. "I thought the same thing. I hoped David had changed, that he'd grown up and really wanted to be your father. But some people don't change, no matter how much we want them to." David, who'd been standing uncomfortably by the fireplace during this exchange, finally spoke up. "You're twisting everything around. I do want to be part of Jamie's life. Maybe I made some mistakes today, but I'm learning. This is all new to me." "What's new?" Marcus stood, his patience finally exhausted. "Being a father. You've had 7 years to figure that out. Caring about your son's emotional well-being, that should come naturally. Or maybe what's new is realizing that Jamie comes with a very wealthy stepfather now." David's mask slipped completely. "You think you're better than me because you have money? You think you can just buy yourself a family and everything will be perfect? I think I'm better than you because I actually care about Jamie's happiness more than my own financial gain," Marcus shot back. "I think I'm better than you because when he has nightmares, I want to comfort him, not calculate how much child support I can extract from the situation." "Stop it!" Jamie's voice was surprisingly strong for such a small child. "Stop fighting about me like I'm not here!" The adults fell silent, chastened by the boy's unexpected assertion. Jamie slid down from the sofa and walked to the center of the room, his small frame somehow commanding attention despite his size. "David, I wanted you to be my dad," Jamie said, his voice steady but sad. "I wanted it so much that it hurts sometimes. But dads are supposed to love their kids more than anything else in the world. They're supposed to want to spend time with them and take care of them and make them feel safe." He looked directly at David with those impossibly mature brown eyes. "You don't love me. You love the idea of getting money because of me. That's not the same thing." The accuracy of the assessment, coming from a 7-year-old, was devastating. David's face flushed with anger and embarrassment, but he couldn't deny the truth of Jamie's words. "Mr. Marcus," Jamie continued, turning to his stepfather, "I know you married Mom because of business stuff, but you've been more like a real dad to me in 2 days than David was in 3 hours. You listen when I talk. You answer my questions. You make me feel like I matter." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, not the painful breaking he'd expected, but something warmer and more hopeful. "You do matter, Jamie. You matter more than you could possibly know." "Then can we please stop talking about custody and courts and money?" Jamie asked plaintively. "Can we just be a family, the 3 of us?" Patricia wiped away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. In 30 years of friendship with Marcus, she'd never seen him look at another human being the way he was looking at Jamie right now, with pure, uncomplicated love. David realized he was losing control of the situation. "This isn't over. I have legal rights, and I'm going to exercise them. You can't just shut me out because you don't like my methods." "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway, "that's exactly what we're going to do." Everyone turned to see Eleanor Martinez standing in the entrance to the living room, supported by a walker, but radiating the kind of quiet strength that comes from surviving life's worst challenges. Sarah's mother looked frail from her cancer treatments, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. "Grandma Eleanor!" Jamie ran to her, careful to be gentle as he hugged her legs. "Hello, my sweet boy," Eleanor said, her voice warm with love as she stroked Jamie's hair. "I heard there was some trouble today." She looked directly at David, her gaze unflinching despite her physical frailty. "David Martinez, you are a coward and a user. You abandoned my daughter when she needed you most, and you broke this child's heart with your selfishness. Now you want to waltz back in because you smell money." "Mrs. Martinez, David began, but Eleanor held up a trembling but authoritative hand. "I'm not finished. I may be dying, but I'm not dead yet, and I will use every breath I have left to make sure you don't hurt this family again." Her voice grew stronger with each word, fueled by righteous maternal fury. "I've spent the last 2 hours on the phone with some very interesting people. You see, when you've lived as long as I have, you accumulate favors and friendships. Judge Patricia Stevens owes me one from when I helped her daughter through a difficult time. Detective Ray Morrison's son was in Jamie's class last year, and my old friend Maria Rodriguez happens to work in the county clerk's office." David's face was growing pale as Eleanor continued her recitation. "It turns out you've been very busy lately, David. 3 different attempts to establish paternity claims in 3 different states. 2 outstanding warrants for unpaid child support in California. And some very interesting financial records that suggest you make a living targeting single mothers who've married wealthy men." The room fell completely silent except for the sound of David's increasingly labored breathing. Marcus felt a surge of admiration for this frail but formidable woman who'd just demolished David's entire scheme with the efficiency of a seasoned prosecutor. "So here's what's going to happen," Eleanor continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd faced down much scarier opponents than David Martinez. You're going to withdraw your custody petition. You're going to disappear from our lives. And if you ever try to contact my grandson again, those warrants in California are going to become very active very quickly." David looked around the room, realizing that every avenue of escape had been systematically closed off. "You can't threaten me like this." "I'm not threatening you, son," Eleanor said with deadly quiet. "I'm making you a promise. Choose wisely." David's shoulders sagged as the full weight of his defeat settled on him. His elaborate scheme to extract money from Marcus through Jamie had crumbled in the face of an elderly woman's protective love and lifetime of accumulated influence. "This isn't over," he said weakly. But everyone in the room knew it was. "Yes, it is," Jamie said firmly, moving back to stand between Marcus and Sarah. "It's over because I choose who my real family is, and you're not it." David Martinez walked out of the Blackwell mansion that day and never returned. The custody papers were withdrawn within a week, and no further legal challenges materialized. But the real victory wasn't legal or financial. It was the moment when a 7-year-old boy chose love over biology, and a man who'd forgotten how to care about anyone learned what it meant to be a real father. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the observation room of Methodist Hospital's pediatric wing, watching through the one-way window as Jamie sat cross-legged on the floor of the children's cancer ward. Around the boy sat 6 young patients, ranging in age from 4 to 12, all of them bald from chemotherapy treatments, all of them completely entranced by the small wooden animals Jamie was showing them. "And this one is Thunder," Jamie was saying, holding up the carved horse his grandfather had made years earlier. "He was really angry and scared when I first met him, but once he realized I wouldn't hurt him, he became my best friend." A little girl with large eyes and no eyebrows raised her hand tentatively. "Do you think the horses at the farm will like us even though we don't have hair?" Jamie's response was immediate and certain. "Animals don't care about hair, Sophia. They care about your heart, and all of you have the biggest, strongest hearts I've ever seen." Dr. Patricia Wells joined Marcus at the window, her expression soft with wonder. "In 30 years of pediatric oncology, I've never seen anything like this. Those children have been withdrawn and frightened for weeks. Jamie's been here for 20 minutes and they're already laughing." Through the window, they could see Jamie demonstrating how to approach an imaginary horse, his movements gentle and confident as he guided the children through the proper technique. The little patients followed his every instruction with the serious attention of students learning something vitally important. "He's been asking to come here every Saturday for the past month," Marcus said quietly. "Sarah and I finally agreed, but only if he wanted to visit with other children going through medical treatments. We thought it would help him understand what his grandmother was experiencing. And instead, he's become their unofficial therapy coordinator," Patricia observed. "The nursing staff tells me the children ask for Horseboy every day." Marcus smiled at the nickname, Horseboy. It was perfectly fitting for a child who seemed to communicate with animals on some mystical level that defied scientific explanation. In the 3 months since David Martinez had been expelled from their lives, Jamie's gift had only grown stronger and more pronounced. The Blackwell estate had become an unofficial sanctuary for rescued horses, with Jamie somehow knowing exactly what each animal needed to heal from past trauma. Thunder had become his constant companion, but they'd also welcomed a blind mare named Stella, an elderly gelding called Winston who'd been saved from a kill auction, and most recently, a young filly named Hope who'd been severely abused by her previous owners. "Mr. Marcus," Jamie had explained just last week as he worked patiently with Hope, "she's not mean, she's just scared that people will hurt her again. But if we show her that love is stronger than fear, she'll remember how to trust." The wisdom in that simple statement had hit Marcus like a revelation. Jamie wasn't just healing horses, He was teaching everyone around him about the transformative power of patience, compassion, and unconditional love. "How is Eleanor doing?" Patricia asked, her voice gentle. She'd been overseeing Eleanor Martinez's cancer treatment since the wedding and had become genuinely fond of the fierce older woman. "Better," Marcus replied, hope evident in his voice. "The new treatment protocol is working. Her tumor markers are down 60% from 3 months ago. She's regained 15 pounds and her energy is coming back." "And the financial stress?" "Gone." Marcus's tone was matter-of-fact, but Patricia could hear the satisfaction beneath it. "All medical bills paid, plus a trust fund established for any future treatments she might need. Sarah doesn't have to work 16-hour days anymore. She's actually taking art classes at the community college, something she'd always dreamed of doing." Through the window, they watched Jamie carefully help a young boy named Alex position his hands to pet an imaginary horse. Alex had been the most withdrawn patient in the ward, traumatized not just by his illness, but by his parents' divorce during his treatment. With Jamie, though, he was opening up like a flower in sunlight. "And how are you doing, Marcus?" Patricia asked pointedly. "Really?" Marcus considered the question carefully. 3 months ago, if someone had told him he'd be spending his Saturdays in a children's hospital, that he'd have 4 rescue horses living on his property, and that he'd be genuinely, completely happy, he would have recommended professional psychiatric evaluation. "I'm different," he said finally. "Jamie and Sarah, they've changed everything. I used to measure success by profit margins and stock prices. Now I measure it by whether Jamie laughs at breakfast and whether Sarah smiles when she thinks I'm not looking." "You love them." It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway. "More than I thought possible, more than I knew I was capable of." The session in the children's ward was winding down. Jamie was distributing small wooden animals to each child, horses, dogs, rabbits and birds that he'd spent hours carving with his grandfather's old whittling knife. Each animal was unique, crafted specifically for its recipient with an intuitive understanding of what that child needed most. "Same time next Saturday?" Jamie asked as he prepared to leave, and the chorus of excited agreement from the young patients made Marcus's chest swell with pride. Jamie emerged from the wardroom and spotted Marcus through the observation window, his face lighting up with the pure joy that had become his default expression since joining the Blackwell family. He ran to Marcus and launched himself into a hug that still caught Marcus off guard with its fierce intensity. "Did you see, Dad? Alex talked today. He told me about his dog Rex and how much he misses him. I think we should invite Alex to visit our horses when he's feeling better." "Dad." The word still sent a jolt of warmth through Marcus every time Jamie used it. The boy had stopped calling him Mr. Marcus 6 weeks earlier, the transition happening so naturally that none of them had really noticed until Sarah pointed it out one evening at dinner. "I saw," Marcus replied, lifting Jamie up. "I'm very proud of you. You have a special gift, and you're using it to help people. That's the most important thing anyone can do with their talents. Grandma Eleanor says that's what gifts are for, to help other people feel less alone in the world." Eleanor, the woman who'd become the backbone of their unusual family, offering wisdom and love in equal measure while fighting her own battle with grace and determination. Her presence in their lives had transformed the Blackwell mansion from a showplace into a real home, filled with laughter and warmth and the comfortable chaos of a family that genuinely cared for each other. "Speaking of Grandma Eleanor," Marcus said as they walked toward the hospital's main exit, "she has a surprise for you at home." Jamie's eyes widened with excitement. "What kind of surprise?" "The kind you'll have to wait to see," Marcus replied with a grin that matched his son's enthusiasm. The drive home was filled with Jamie's animated chatter about his hospital visit, his plans for helping the young patients, and his ideas for new wooden animals to carve. Marcus found himself hanging on every word, marveling at the complexity and compassion of this remarkable 7-year-old who'd transformed from a shy, struggling child into a confident young healer in just 3 months. When they arrived at the estate, Sarah was waiting on the front porch with Eleanor, both women practically glowing with excitement. Jamie tumbled out of the car and ran to them, immediately sensing that something wonderful was about to happen. "What's the surprise? What's the surprise?" he chanted, bouncing on his toes. Eleanor smiled with the special radiance that came from being able to grant a child's deepest wish. "Close your eyes, my sweet boy, and hold out your hands." Jamie obeyed immediately, his small hands cupped and waiting. Eleanor placed something small and warm into his palms, and when Jamie opened his eyes, he gasped in wonder. It was a puppy, tiny, golden, and impossibly soft, with bright blue eyes and a pink tongue that immediately began licking Jamie's fingers. The little dog couldn't have been more than 6 weeks old, and it fit perfectly in Jamie's small hands. "She's yours," Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. "Dr. Wells helped us find her. She's a golden retriever puppy from a very special bloodline. Her mama was a therapy dog, and her daddy was too. We thought she might like to learn from the best teacher in Kentucky." Jamie stared at the puppy in amazement, tears of pure joy streaming down his cheeks. "She's really mine, forever and always?" "Udrit, forever and always," Sarah confirmed, kneeling down to be at eye level with her son. "What are you going to name her?" Jamie held the puppy up so he could look directly into her bright blue eyes. The little dog regarded him with the same serious attention that all animals seemed to give Jamie, as if recognizing something special in this small human. "Hope," Jamie said without hesitation. "Her name is Hope, because that's what she's going to help me give to all the sick kids and scared animals we meet." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion as he watched his son cradle the puppy with infinite gentleness. In that moment, he saw their entire future stretching ahead, Jamie growing into a young man who would heal both animals and humans with equal skill, Sarah blooming into the artist she'd always been meant to be, Eleanor beating cancer through sheer force of will and stubborn love. And somehow, impossibly, Marcus Blackwell, the man who'd once measured worth in dollars and considered emotions a liability, had become the center of it all. Not through money or power or manipulation, but through the simple act of opening his heart to a 7-year-old boy who taught him that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, sold, or traded. They were earned through love, protected through commitment, and multiplied through generosity. As the family walked into their home together, Hope the puppy snuggled against Jamie's chest, while Thunder whinnied a greeting from the nearby pasture. Marcus realized that his transformation was complete. The arrogant CEO who'd once mocked a child for his dreams had become a man who would move mountains to protect those dreams. And it had all started with a 7-year-old boy, a wild stallion, and the extraordinary power of love to change everything. That evening, as Marcus tucked Jamie into bed with Hope curled up beside him, Jamie looked up with those wise brown eyes that had seen too much pain and somehow chosen joy anyway. "Dad, do you think David will ever learn how to love people the right way?" The question caught Marcus off guard with its maturity and compassion. Even after everything David had put them through, Jamie was still capable of hoping for his biological father's redemption. "I don't know, son," Marcus answered honestly. "Some people take longer to learn about love than others, but that's not your responsibility. Your job is to keep being the amazing, loving person you already are." Jamie nodded solemnly, then smiled with the radiant happiness that had become his trademark. "I love our family, Dad. I love that we all chose each other." I love our family too, Jamie, more than anything in the world. As Marcus turned off the light and headed for the door, Jamie's sleepy voice followed him. Dad, thank you for keeping your promise. What promise was that? That you'd be here when I got back from that first lunch with David. You said you'd be right here, and you have been. Every day. Marcus stood in the darkway for a long moment, overwhelmed by the simple truth of his son's words. He had kept his promise, not just the literal one about being present, but the deeper commitment to being the father Jamie deserved. Sweet dreams, son, he whispered. Sweet dreams, Dad. And as Marcus walked down the hallway toward the bedroom he now shared with Sarah, toward the life he'd never known he wanted, he realized that sometimes the most extraordinary miracles come disguised as ordinary moments. A boy and a horse, a family choosing love over convenience. A man discovering that his heart was capable of far more than he'd ever imagined. The transformation was complete, but the story would continue for years to come, written in rescued animals and healed children, in art classes and hospital visits, in the daily miracle of a family that had found each other against all odds and chose to stay together through love.